Welcome back, people. It is the morning edition. We have had an exciting morning thus far. We have chatted with the tutor president on the issues relating to school, particularly about, students not turning out to school right after Carnival. We have chatted with Dr. Ottley, a former planning minister, as well former university principal here at St. Augustine campus. And we just ended with Mr. Noreen Joseph, who is from the Dominion Appliances and Gifts Shop Limited. I particularly enjoyed that segment, and he gave some words of advice, and one of them being that stood out for me is about sustainability. Ensuring that whatever business that you get into, and whatever business at all, you ensure that it remains, that it is sustained. And many times, when you get into business, when people get into business, that's not one of the issues or factors that they consider. Put God first, he said, an important factor. In anything that you do, put God first as well. This is a small business that is thriving in Tobago, 6 years old, thriving in an environment where there are well-established giants in the industry, and that is in the industry of appliances. Dr. Ottley spoke a lot about refocusing Trinidad and Tobago, refocusing its strategies internally to treat with the issues affecting the global space, particularly Trump's policies and how that affects Trinidad and Tobago vis-a-vis tariff impositions at NAFTA, the issues with the licenses at Venezuela, the Cuban doctor issue. Dr. Ottley saying, yes, continue to pursue these issues, but focus internally and refocus on its strategies and realigning, not just Trinidad and Tobago with CARICOM, consider realigning its allies in terms of its global space. We are going to shift gears in just a bit. We are going to be speaking with stakeholders relating to the Central Bank Museum, which will host its first exhibition for 2025, entitled From Chanterelle to Calypsonian, celebrating 90 years of female Calypsonians in Trinidad's commercialized Calypso tents. Now, this is very apt because, of course, International Women's Day is on Saturday. To tell us more, Dr. Rudolph Ottley, and I will tell you a little bit more about him. He's the founder and manager of the Divas Calypso Cabaret International, and Nimah Muwakil-Zakuri, a senior curator, Central Bank Museum. Good morning to you both, and welcome to the morning edition.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Right. Good morning, Dr. Ottley. Now, Dr. Ottley he holds a PhD in Cultural Studies from the UTT, where he's currently a senior lecturer. He has also published 10 books, and he founded the world's only female Calypso organization, tent, the Divas Cabaret International, which was launched in 2004. Dr. Ottley, why you felt the need to create a space for only female Calypsonians? Why was that necessary?
Okay, before I answer that question, the two errors on that statement you made there. One is that I'm no longer at UTT.
Okay.
And the second one was it's 14 books rather than 10. We're currently working on the 15th one right now.
Go. We need to update
we need to update the file of it.
Yeah.
Yes. The reason was basically to provide a sanctuary, a space for aspiring young female Calypsonians, because I noticed during that period, 1995 to about 2002, there were an increasing number of women attending the auditions to be part of the Calypso tents. But what we discovered was that maybe about 2% of maybe 40 women who may have auditioned will have been accepted into the tents. And I felt that there was a need for us to provide a space for all these young aspiring women to be part of the Carnival and the Calypso fraternity, thus the evolution of the Divas Calypso Cabaret International in 2004.
So you've created a space for only female Calypsonians because there was a need to expand and to have more women involved in Calypso. 90 years ago.
Not only that, but to continue the history and the tradition of women being central to the Calypso tent, because way back in the Gael and in the backyards, women were central to the Calypso tents, the non-commercial tents. But when they became part of the commercial system that was created by Rudolph Douglas in 1921, there came about a shift whereby women were marginalized out of the tents. And that continued up to, and even today we still find that work taking place. So the Divas really is formed to provide and ensure that the woman's presence in Calypso is maintained and is enhanced.
So this segment really is focusing on the Central Bank Museum from Chanterelle to Calypsonian, 1935 to 2025, a collaboration with Dr. Rudolph Ottley celebrating 90 years of female Calypsonians in Trinidad's commercialized Calypso tents. That is from 1935 to 2025. 1935 to 2025. Dr. Ottley, before I bring in our next guest, who were some of the pioneers, women-wise, in Calypso starting back in 1935?
Well, we have a whole bunch of women, but in 1935, Lady Trinidad, she was the first female to be registered or to perform in one of what we call the commercialized Calypso tents of the era. And it's important to note commercialized because they were Calypso tents before 1921, but they were all part of that barricade system. But when in 1921, Rudolph Douglas created the commercialized tents, that's when the fees were charged to enter the tents. People were paid as professionals, and therefore we have to make that distinction between the tents that existed in the backyards prior to 1921, and from 21 to 1935, that is when Lady Trinidad came part of that early era. But even before Lady Trinidad, you have to go back to the backyards, whereby you had Bodicea and Cariso Jane and these people who were women stick fighters, but who also sang Cariso or Calypso in that era. After Lady Trinidad, you had Lady Beginner, Lady Irie, and then you move forward up to Calypso Rose, right. Calypso Princess, singing Francine, and a whole bunch of people after that era.
All right, so let me bring in our next guest, Nimah Muwakil-Zakuri, Senior Curator, Central Bank Museum. Good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Why was this venture important for the Central Bank?
Okay, so at the Central Bank Museum, we run a number of exhibitions on a yearly basis. And we were approached by Dr. Ottley to host this very significant exhibition on women in Calypso. And we believe that it's a story that has not been told, especially in the mainstream. And that's why we thought that it would be an excellent addition to our exhibition programming for 2025.
Tell us about the exhibition. When is it going to take place? How long it's going to be? How can people get involved, participate? Give us some details.
Okay, so the exhibition opened on February the 20th at the Central Bank Museum, which is located on the ground floor of the Central Bank. It will run until March the 21st. We are open Mondays to Fridays, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. So the public can access the museum via walk-ins. It's free of charge, so you don't need to book a visit. Once you're a group of 10 and under, if you're over 10 in your group, you have to book a visit through our website.
Okay, so Dr. Ottley, what are some of the highlights about, or what should people look out for at this museum?
Well, if I tell you, then you may not want to come anymore. So I will suggest you come and find out and see what we have there. And what we have done really straight.
Tease or interest. That's the tease or interest.
Well, what you see, you recognize a number of the formative women who were part of the backyard Calypso system. As I mentioned before, people like Bodicea, Cariso Jane, and these women who we seldom read about or we hear about. And what we have managed to do is to recreate imageries of these women, so that people get a sense that long before we have the Calypso Rose and the singing Francine and Denise Plum and these people, we had women who were integral to the art form of Calypso. And that is very significant, because there seems to be a narrative around that maybe Calypso, women in Calypso started around, mainly around Calypso Rose and the modern generation. But women have always been part of the history of Calypso. But for various reasons, they have not been documented, they have not been highlighted. And our main purpose is to highlight women in Calypso, to show how significant they have been and how integral they have been to the Calypso art form.
Are women received in a similar way to their male counterparts in the industry? Is there a difference in how they are received?
Well, I think over the years there's a closer sense of equity, but given the society in which we live, in all of the careers and professions in the society, there's always been that divide whereby men seem to get preference over women, and it exists within the Calypso tents the same way. So, but we are working towards bringing equity in terms of equal pay, equal compensation for performances, women being highlighted on playbills. For example, there's a Calypso tent in 2025 where they highlighted only men artists, only men members of the cast. Although there were at least half of the women in the tent, half of the cast members were females. But when you look at the advertising, they only highlighted men. And so those kinds of subtle things we are trying to address and to eradicate from the system.
It's quite interesting, because Calypsos over the years, their themes really is about women. But you're saying women do not command the same kind of status as our men in the art form. That's quite interesting.
But again, we cannot isolate it. It's not only in Calypso, it is in the society in general, where women are not treated equally in most of the professions, in most of the areas of our life. So nothing new, except that we are trying to address that within the Calypso fraternity.
Mm-hmm. Can you describe for us, I know you don't want to give out too much, but when one walks into the museum, what are we looking for? What should we look for? Are there pictures, history of the...
Yeah, there are lots of archival material that will astonish you in terms of, you will probably say, wow, I didn't know this existed, or I didn't know what this person looked like when she was younger, or I didn't know the history of women in Calypso, the competition that existed long before 1985. Because again, there's a narrative that makes the claim that women in competitions only started in 1985 when NJAC started the women competition.
Right.
But actually it started in 1969. It was won by Calypso Rose when the Review tent and the original Young Brigade tent started that competition in Skinner Park, San Fernando, under the leadership of Lal Pasutan and the management of the both Calypso tents.
Would you?
So it's not like
Would your visitors be treated to recordings at all?
We have live recordings, we have video productions, and you may even be entertained by a guest female performer whilst you're there.
So, in 1935, you mentioned one of the pioneers. That would have been whom? So
Lady Trinidad, Thelma Lane, Lady Trinidad, was the first woman to be contracted to a commercialized Calypso tent.
And you have recordings?
And that's why we are honoring her and all of the women in Calypso, because this year marks the 90th anniversary of that historic occasion.
Quite interesting. Quite interesting, I have to say. Ms. Nimah Muwakil-Zakuri, am I getting your name correct?
Nimah Muwakil-Zakuri.
Nimah Muwakil-Zakuri. So, what else can you tell us about the museum that you have collaborated with the Central Bank? Why you felt this was an initiative, a good collaboration to engage with Dr. Rudolph Ottley, and what else to look forward to?
Okay, so as I said, this is a part of our history that truly we feel it's hidden and that should be highlighted, and the museum under the Central Bank wanted to be able to bring this to the public. It was a great team effort to bring Dr. Ottley's scholarship to life through this exhibition, and we partnered with a number of institutions who I would like to thank. So the National Archives, they actually loaned us the 1884 Gazette, the actual Gazette in which the Ordinance number 2 was published banning kalinda and banning drumming. So you could actually see that colonial ordinance when you get to the museum. And also the National Museum, the National Library, and Ida Kader Group for lending us some of the artifacts that show.
Nimah Muwakil-Zakuri, Senior Curator, Central Bank Museum, and Dr. Rudolph Ottley. We want to thank you so much for sharing, telling us about the Central Bank Museum, which is ongoing. It's free of charge. You can go online to get more information about it. That's it for today. Thank you so much, guys, for being with us. And that's it for today. See you.